Hey, beautiful souls and creative minds. Welcome to the Artist Stoop, the podcast where we turn the art world into your personal playground. I'm Jillian Zapata, your host, and I can't wait to dive into the art world with you. Each episode will be kicking it with an incredible artist, unraveling their stories and turning the spotlight on the magic that happens beyond the brush. Get ready to discover new perspectives, forge connections, and immerse yourself one captivating conversation at a time. So grab your favorite beverage, maybe a sketchbook, and let's jump into the kaleidoscope of creativity together. This is the Artist Stoop, where art isn't just a thing you see, it's an experience you feel. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Artist Stoop. And today our guest is Kyle, but he likes to refer to himself as Big and Pasty. That's his artistic name, if you will. So Big and Pasty's artistic journey is one driven by a relentless itch to create. When not painting, Big and Pasty spends time tattooing and exploring digital design. This multifaceted artist's path has been anything but linear. After a stint in AmeriCorps, which brought emotional fulfillment but not a clear direction, Big and Pasty turned to various forms of art to scratch that persistent itch. Through painting, digital design, and tattoos, Big and Pasty has embarked on a parallel journey of self-experimentation and artistic growth. Each piece of work reflects a blend of youthful eagerness and hardworking spirit, serving as a soothing calamine lotion to that creative itch. The art is nostalgic yet pushes boundaries. So welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I have to ask because, obviously I've met you and I call you Kyle.
Yeah.
So where does the Big and Pasty come from? Like, how did you come to that as your artistic name?
So it actually started, I'm sure we'll talk about this a lot, but my brother is like a very big inspiration to me. And my brother is 6 years my younger. And when I was in college, I really didn't like the way that I was looking. And like, I was just like having like a lot of like self-confidence issues. And so I had my regular Instagram account, which was like at Kyle McNeil or whatever. I don't even remember what it was. And I wanted a way to like track my workout progress as he coached me through those things. And I had egotistically kind of made it my goal to like, and he's huge, like he bodybuilds, like he's jacked. And I was like, I'm going to catch up. Like, but I wanted a way to like post stuff for accountability, like just for myself. And like, if close friends wanted to like follow, then that could be something that they could see. But I wanted to have something that was like just for me, really. And so I was like, well, I'm 6'1", 6'2", 6'4" with heels on. And so I can post, and I'm white as hell. So I can, Big and Pasty just seemed like the natural thing to go. I mean, I used to order when I go to McDonald's, like my McDonald's order would be the Big and Tasty before they discontinued it. And so that just like, I don't know, all those things kind of like lined up and I thought it was funny. So I did that and I would just post workout content, but not like what you see today where it's like people like actually doing cool shit in the gym. It would just be me, flexing, and I would edit the photo to hell. Like I would turn the saturation all the way up. I turned the red all the way up and it would look monstrous. Like you could, and the whole point was you could clearly tell that it was edited. And like, I didn't want people to think that I was like posting the photos because like I wanted people to think that I was big or I was like trying to make thirst traps. I was like, this is exclusively for me. And so like I see the original image, but then like the posting it is like allows, and even, I started bodybuilding for like 2 years. So like I did get big. But at the time when I started, I was just tall. I wasn't like, built out at all either.
Yeah. All right. So Big and Pasty just stuck and you just kept it through.
And I deleted the old Instagram and I just was like, this is all my content now. So that's like and then it has just become various manifestations of the art stuff after that. That's really cool. I like that. So, I just want to dive in real quick, just how I came to know you and meet you. And, so I remember someone else had posted your story. I know this is sad. And so I'm going to
glaze
No, no,
over it. Right? Okay.
no, no. You
I
and
know it's sensitive.
I'm sure I know what you're talking about. So you can totally dive in. It's totally fine.
Okay, so I can't remember if it was Steph Shock or someone else, another artist here in Dallas had posted your thing about your dog,
Yeah,
and
Sully.
yeah, and she's sweet doggy, and how it got sick, and then you needed help, because you didn't
Yeah,
know what the sickness was, and you had to take her to the vet and everything, and people were starting to donate, and
yeah,
um, it just breaks my heart. I just I can't even imagine.
yeah.
So that's how I actually came to find you, and then so I started following you, and I saw you were an
Hmm.
artist, and I liked your work because it's different, it's unique than anything that I would create, and so it's just like whenever I see something like that, I always am like appreciate it because just because you have to appreciate different kinds of art,
Of course, yeah.
and then you were at the other art fair, and I was walking around, and I came up to you, and I was like, "Wait, I know this work." And then I was like, "Wait, And then I remember, and then that's how you and I met, was actually at the other art fair, and we got to talk for a few minutes, and
Yeah,
that's how you're here.
yeah. That's it.
That's it. That's how we came to be here. So, Kyle, so you have like a very diverse, unique background because obviously on your Instagram, like you post about the tattooing, you do the tattooing, like do you travel to do it, or like do you have a specific spot where you do it, or is that how does
So
the
I'm
tattooing come into your art as well?
so I'm based out of Fort Worth.
Okay.
Obviously, like as with most adults, I have friends that live all over. And I am not a licensed tattooer, and I am not a classically trained tattooer. So as with almost all things, I'm essentially completely self-taught. I was
Mm-hmm.
really blessed during COVID when my brother and I decided we wanted to get into tattooing. That my brother has low standards, and he allowed me to just practice on him from the jump. Um, and you know, I like to think that I pick things up quickly. I think that tattooing is one of those things where the more I get into it and the more tattoos that I do on folks, the more I realize like I would really benefit from having that like professional like oversight. I can understand the appeal of an apprenticeship. They're just like a little too restrictive for my current cash flow situation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but and sorry to answer your question, like I am based out of Fort Worth area, but I will travel to do art almost whenever I can. Um, I I want to be able to provide my big beef, and like I think if there's any like common thread that like ties all of my work together and like my kind of like the way I think about art in the world, it's that fine art should be more accessible, and
Hundred
it often
percent.
isn't. Yeah, and like I hate when I have like I'm a waiter, and like in my soul I'm a waiter. I've been a waiter for 13 years, and like I know how hard it is to make money, and waiters, at least at good restaurants like I've worked at, tend to make, I mean, better money than teachers. And like, it's crazy to me that there are like the prices that I feel like I have to charge in
Mm-hmm.
quotes, scare quotes, if you're just listening, that like those are I 150 $300 for a print is crazy. That's a piece of paper. Like, you know what I mean? Like if it's an original, there's some emotional like something tied to that, but I
Mm-hmm.
want to be able to provide any service that I can do creatively at like a rate that is affordable to people, especially to people who I know. Like the friends and family discount is like a very real thing already as is. And whether it be, I mean, I shot my girlfriend's sister's wedding, and like for photos, or if I can do tattoos or whatever, like if I can make it worth my while to like drive out to you and give you something really cool that you like that means a lot to me. And like the money becomes secondary, and like sometimes the money doesn't need to be secondary, it needs to be primary, like when I'm selling
Mm-hmm.
to strangers or when I'm doing like traveling art shows throughout the US. Like
Yeah.
for example, I go to Frisco and then I go to Pittsburgh later this month to do art shows. Like those prices have to be more like locked down and secure because they're like business transactions. But I think art is always going to be a more emotional thing for most people, and so
Mm-hmm.
like there's like an emotional element to the transaction as well, where it's like I get to, if it's tattooing for example, I get to put my art on your body forever. That's cool, period, end of story. And like you are now a business card, so I am getting something out of this, it's not 100% like what the value is time wise, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
artists charging $300 $400 an hour, $100 an hour, whatever it is, like if it's all negotiable. Like
Yeah.
if you've got something going on, like I want to help you get something cool, whether it be a painting or whether it be a, whatever. It has to still make sense at the end of the day. Like I can't, spend
We
36 hours on a painting and then give it to you for free. But,
Yeah. No,
you
that's
know,
100%. And I think that's, one of the reasons why, one, that's like one of the biggest questions that I think most artists have is how do I price my art? Because it's like, who's putting the value on it? The only
yeah.
person
And
putting the
it,
value is you as the artist,
amen.
and you're like, how do I price this? Because to me, it's just like I've just spent all this time, energy, and effort creating it. One, but also years of practice of putting in the hard work and so many other things. But then it's just like at the end of the day, you also you want your art to be accessible so people actually can enjoy it, but then you also have to pay bills. And
Yeah.
so it's just like
I posted
where
something about this the other day. I said like is like I in my studio here, like I don't know, I'll give you like a little quick pan around, but like the in the studio, like I have the little price tags that I hand make for shows. And
mm-hmm,
I kind of had like not a crisis of confidence, but I was just like looking at them the other day and I was like, I have this listed in my apartment for like 900 or in my house, like $975. Like, is it worth $975 if it never sells? You know what I mean? Like it, and the reality is it's not worth 975 to me. Cause like I paid $70 to paint it. Like I
yeah,
was like, I would never go buy art. I would just go make it. And so I am in some instances like the worst judge of price because like things that I spent hours and hours and hours on, I don't even want to give away, but like I have to sell it because I can't keep the things I make. Like,
yeah. And it's really interesting because like I'm in the same boat, and it's just like I've sold stuff from like collections, but then I have leftovers of pieces from that same collection. I was like, well, I want those to be gone because I don't want to
yeah,
store them anymore. So it's just like I don't want to drop the price because then I don't want the other people who bought it at the other price lose its value. So it's a really fine line that we as artists is just like that we have to go through, but at the same time we're in charge. It's just like whatever we choose to do is
for
whatever we're
sure.
gonna do. But I
Yeah,
also think something that you brought up is just like uh, that really bothers me is that art needs to be more accessible to more people. And I think like whenever people hear the word art gallery or the art scene or the art world or whatever, all they do is they think about like the New York art scene and auction houses and like snooty people
yeah,
and
$1 million paintings. Yeah,
yeah, and it's just like no, you can, and so that's why people go to the store to buy art rather than
yeah,
finding artists like yourself or myself or any of the community that we have here in Dallas, where it's just like you can actually buy accessible, really cool art
yeah,
at a very decent, at a pretty
yeah. I mean,
affordable cost.
by and
And
large, I think my prices are the same as IKEA. It's just like a matter of getting people in the door.
exactly, yeah, and that's what hoping like doing like this podcast and interviewing more and more artists to hopefully share other people's stories so more people can be exposed to real artists, if
Amen.
you will.
Yeah.
So how did you get into art? Because you have the AmeriCorps, you have all these things. So how did art come into your life?
Um, that's a good question. Growing up, I didn't really feel like I was an artist. I didn't. I knew. In deep in my soul, I knew I wasn't an artist. I really wanted to like study history or like read or T Rexes and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And like art class was a class for goofing off because I couldn't draw photorealistically. Like there was a girl in my class named Alexis Corrigan in like I think first grade, and she
I
was
love the fact that
drawing.
you still remember her name.
I gotta think. It's like if I meet you in the street, I'm gonna forget your name like that. But it's like if it's somebody who I went to school with, like I could probably tell you everybody I went to school with, and I was not even friends with like most of the kids at the public school. I mean, it's just
Me
like
too.
it's just locked in for some reason. Um, and but like she could draw like as my first grade memory remembers like photorealistic like horses, and I was like, oh well, I'm not an artist because she's already like got this locked down. And I've also just like been very like I saw a post the other day that said we don't do things because they are easy, we do things because we thought they were going to be easy. Like that is a like emblem for my life. It's just like if it isn't easy, at least at a young age, if it wasn't easy I would quit.
Hmm.
Or if I wasn't the best instantly I would quit.
Hmm.
And I think that's part of the reason that I got into art is because like I can be the best at doing whatever Kyle McNeil makes because like there's really nobody to measure against. But then you get the whole like imposter syndrome, and like you're looking at people who are selling $1 million paintings, like, fuck, I'm trash. Like,
You're like, what did I do wrong?
yeah. But my dad, when I went away to school, gave me his old camera, and it was like top of the line in like 2008. And so when I went away to college in like 2015, and then he gave it to me in like 2016, I think, I would use it as an excuse to wake up for my 8 a.m.s. So I would bus to campus and then like walk around and just do like still life photos of just like architecture and the simple stuff that a lot of people get into photography with, like stuff that isn't moving, stuff that isn't like, it's just about like mastering that like rule of thirds, like that visual. And I didn't know anything about the technique. I didn't really even know how to use my camera. I had a friend who was really into photography, and he had like told me I should just learn to shoot on manual. And so like that's like controlling the aperture, the shutter speed, and the something else I can't remember.
ISO.
It's escaping me. ISO, yeah, all independently of each other. And
which
I didn't know what any of that meant.
Difficult to master.
Yeah,
it's a true technique.
Yeah, exactly. But like I was shooting on it, and this camera is like 10 years out of date when I'm shooting on it, and so it was a very slow lens. I think the lowest it could go is 5.6, which is like, I mean, it's a very open, or it's very closed. And then so I was just like, I'd have to shoot explicitly during the daytime or like in golden hour, and that was it. And I couldn't get anything else, and then it would still be grainy. But anyway, so I would just go and I would go shoot photos, and I loved shooting photos, but I mean, I wasn't selling them. You know what I mean? It would be like, I would charge somebody like $100 to do all their grad photos. Cause I just didn't know how to value my service. I didn't like, it was just like for my friends, etc. And then I'd go home and edit them in Lightroom and give them the package. But, so like I did photography like for fun as like a creative outlet in college. And then during COVID, I moved back home, and I was living with someone who's now an ex at the time, and we ended up breaking up, and I moved back in with my family, and my brother and I, again 6 years younger than me, were hanging out. He was in high school or had just graduated, and he would just spend all day on Photoshop making like custom artwork for artists, like unsolicited, just like he liked listening to like Playboy Cardi or Future or like hip hop artists, and would make posters that he would then print out and put in his room. And I would always go after him and be like, dude, you have no money. Like, you don't have $6 to go to Office Max to go print this photo. But he was just like so much happier than I was at the time. And I would just sit over his shoulder and just be like, like you need to make the text like centered. Like, this is how you center the text. And this colorway is not working. Like this washes you out, like, et cetera, et cetera. Just like managing his art. And at one point he like looks over his shoulder and he's like, dog, you can get Photoshop. Like, you can just leave me alone. Like, I'm having fun. I'm printing things out for my space. Leave me alone. And I was like, okay, well, kind of like, fuck you. Like, I will go do that. And
siblings do.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so I went and did it. And then I spent like probably like one summer just making these, like, if you scroll back on my Instagram, like really far, you can see these like collages that you like swipe through, and they're all stitched together. And so I would just, whenever I went on a trip, I would take a bunch of photos with like this, again, Garbo camera that my dad gave me, and just make cool stuff. And it was art just for me. Like, I wasn't trying to like build a portfolio or do anything like that. It was just like, this is fun. And I could lock in, and, you're zoomed into like the pixel, like cropping stuff out. And I made some really cool stuff, and like really, really fun. And then I went to AmeriCorps, which is like it's like the Peace Corps, but domestic kind of. So they hate that when people describe it like that, but that's what it is. So I was a team leader. They give you the keys to a van, a credit card, and you're in charge of like 10, 8 to 26-year-olds. And it's a super, super metal experience. I'd recommend it to like anybody, especially like leaving high school, like not knowing what they want to do with their life, like trying to figure out how to make it. Like, go get some community service hours in. And it sounds like, oh, it's lame. No, it's so fun. And it's super hard. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do, but it's so fun. And during that time, art took a huge back burner. I was just like, I was working like 50, 60 hours a week, and just like, and then when I'm off the clock, I'm still on the clock because I'm managing like interpersonal relationships in the area we live. And so I probably only made like 10 pieces of art like all year. And we're talking like digital files. So like nothing that I put a ton of effort into. I sold some of my art as NFTs during that time, which that was cool because that was the first technical art I ever sold. And then I got out of that because you just had to be on Twitter too much.
Yeah,
And
right.
yeah, it's just like so exhausting. But I got done with that. I met my now girlfriend. Well, our 3 year anniversary is in September.
Woohoo!
And yeah, and that's how we met, was in the program. And when she went on to Dallas, it was like, okay, I'm back in St. Louis, you're in Dallas, like what's the move? And I was working I had gotten a job as a really sweet gig with a photography company at the time. And it was like as a second shooter, I could go to a wedding, just take photos. I don't really have to interface with the couple. I can send off like 300 photos to be edited. I don't touch the edits. I get paid like anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 for like an
Yeah,
afternoon. It was
yeah.
like,
Wedding
this is
photographies are, yes,
cash money.
I
Yeah.
know.
And I'm not doing lead generation. I'm not cold calling. Like, it was
You're
just a
just the
sweet
second
gig.
shooter.
Yeah. And so I was like, well, cool. I'll move to Dallas. It's a bigger market. This company has an office down there. And I moved down here, and that company is Tolman Media, and Tolman Media went under the week I
Oh,
moved. And they didn't tell anybody. And so they just like went bankrupt and went off the face of the earth. And so I had just signed my lease at like the most expensive apartment I've ever had in my life. And I was like, well, fuck, I'm going to die. So I went to, I think I had like $500 in my bank account, and I went across the street and got a job at a Mexican restaurant. So I had to go back to waiting tables. But I mean, like I said before, I love waiting tables. Like, and then I just didn't have anything to do. So I started painting, and that was how Jailbird came about, which is like kind of like the cartoonier stuff that I've done in the
mm-hmm.
past. And, and then, yeah, and then the art just has evolved from there. But that's how like painting got started. And Jailbird was also always drawn originally in Photoshop, which, if you know anything about like computer programs, like Adobe
That's a lot.
Illustrator is really what you want to be drawing in, not Photoshop, because Photoshop is a destructive platform,
Yeah,
and whereas the other one is a raster, or is a vector platform.
yeah.
And so, like, it's not like, it's just like a very emblematic of my life, again, to use that word, of like just doing things the wrong way to make it work. But yeah, so that's how the Jailbird stuff came about, and then the rest has just been like come through needing
Through all
change
that,
and
and then
experimenting. Yeah.
yeah, that's really cool. And it's really interesting because it's just like I think when I was because my degree's in film, and so it
Okay.
was just like I had been working for my first job. I was so excited. My first big kid job. I got a job at an animation studio, and super excited, project coordinator. But I always loved story, and I was still writing, and I was still like kind of doodling on my own. But then the company went. Well, hello, dog. The company ended up going under because the CEO like didn't manage it well, and so it's just like we all didn't know if we were getting our last paychecks or not, kind of a thing.
Oh damn, that's super
And
scary.
yeah, so I moved back home to Oregon. Where was I going with this story? Sorry, my dog totally distracted me.
You're good.
Hey, bud. um, where, where was I going with this story?
Talking
I
about
don't know.
losing your job out of
Oh yeah,
nowhere.
losing your job. Thank you. Like having lost that job then pushes you into like other things that you don't expect, and then I really started recommitting myself back to my art after that. And then I had the owner of the store that I was working for. She did quilting, but they were art quilts, and she looked at me and she told me, sometimes as an artist you have to have an A and B job,
Yeah,
one to pay the bills, and then the other can supplement the art, or the art can be supplementary to that in order to survive,
for sure.
whatever that may be, until someday when it can be your full A time job. But I feel like a lot of artists, like every artist that I've spoken to, we all have other passions as well, that it's not just one way to be an artist, and I love that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I think the other thing that at least a lot of people my age, or people who I feel like I'm friends with,
Mm-hmm.
they want to do is, it's like, and I've made this mistake before, of just like, oh, I can brute force this, like I can make this work, and that's just not true with almost anything.
Mm-mm.
Like, maybe quitting cigarettes is the easiest one. Like, if you go in and you're saying like, oh, I'm going to quit my job and just start selling houses, start selling insurance, like a lot of those like network driven jobs, like you're not going to make it. Like I've tried both those. Like you have to take years to build that network, and
Mm-hmm.
then otherwise you're just bombing your contact list every day asking like, hey, do you want to buy health and life insurance from me? And like that feels scammy. So
Yeah.
but that's kind of like easing into the cold water versus like thinking like that if you jump in it'll all be okay. Like
Yeah.
it won't be okay. Like you'll be so much worse off. um yeah, it's just way better to like let the momentum build and then let the momentum take you on to the next thing.
Yeah. Because and I think like by doing it that way, I don't want to get all wise wisdom over here. I think that you end up learning more. It's about the journey. No, but it is. It's about like because you don't know all the different skill set one that you're going to learn, the people that you're going to interact, and then also artistically how you end up growing.
Sure, yeah.
Because if you're forcing yourself to like jump head first into the deep end, then sometimes you get stuck doing something that you're not happy with, or your end product, your creativity isn't as honest.
Yeah, I do think that there's like this like cliche of on the other side, like when you've the people who've made it, like or whatever, or the people who are
Mm-hmm.
more successful or who have an established career, whether it be in whatever,
Mm-hmm.
um, to say, oh, like this is the fun time, like this is the time when like you get to do what you want to do, like etc.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in that moment, it isn't fun. Like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's so easy with anything to put your rose-colored glasses on and be like, oh, like growing up at home was so fun, and you go back and think about it, actually no, it wasn't fun at all. Like
You're
or like,
like,
oh,
no.
college was the time of my life. And like, no, it wasn't. You hated your life. Like you were scared of everyone who you wanted to be friends with. Like,
Yeah.
whatever it was, you did no clue what was going on in your life. You were full of anxiety. Like that was not, it's not fun to live in. It's fun to look back on and be like, damn, like I really didn't know shit about how the world was working. So like, that's kind of
Right.
where I'm at right now, where it's like, everybody and their freaking mom is like, yeah, slow down. Like you'll figure it out. Like, you have big goals. Like if you want to be a household name, like you want to be creatively fulfilled. Like those are two big cups. Like you're not going to fill those at 28. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, but like this combo isn't helping that. Like it doesn't change the fact that that's what I want. Like I'm still going to be a ball of anxiety because it's not right now. It's not about the journey. It's like about the destination. And
Yeah.
when you get closer to the destination, it can be about like reflecting on the journey. But especially
Exactly.
as a young person who's like trying to hack it, like the fuck it is not about the journey. I'm trying to get out of this journey. This journey sucks.
Right. You're like, how can I change my situation quicker than what I'm actually going through?
Yeah,
Right.
without knowing the rules, and like even if there aren't any rules, like you have to carve your own path. Like hacking your
Mm-hmm.
way through the jungle, like to get to the mountaintop, is for
Mm-hmm.
sure like a beautiful thing because you're doing something no one else has ever done.
Yeah.
But as soon as you get up there, you're an asshole if you're like, oh, just enjoy it. Like, no, there's mosquitoes down here. Like, this is not
There's
fun.
snakes and there's things that are
Yeah,
gonna attack me.
you suck if that's like your like. I mean, at least, I mean, it can be true. You know what I mean? That you could be like, oh, I wish I had savored it more. Like, but
Mm-hmm.
it's really hard to. I don't know. And I'm lost in another idiom or a metaphor, but like the forest for the trees or something. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
brutal.
Yeah. But we all go through it, and it's just
Yeah.
like, and it's funny because it's just like, you know, I'm going through it now, but it's just like I'm still smiling. I
Yeah.
may be
Exactly.
inside going, "Oh, what's going on?" But right now I'm like, I'm still smiling. That's what you
Yeah.
all get to see.
I
you know,
mean, and there's like a certain type of, and like I mean, I'm very happy that you're still smiling. There's a certain type of like
thanks.
poison to that too, because you kind of know that you're smiling, and is everyone else just smiling? Are we all faking it? You know what I mean?
Right?
I texted my friend the other day. He's a mechanical engineer. He works for like some like I don't actually know what he does, but I always joke that he sells refrigerators. I think he sells refrigerators. I'm not sure. Um, but I texted him. I was like, Clark, are you happy? Like you have everything that I would want. You know what I mean? Like stability, great health insurance, a wife, a dog, like a house. Like you've got it all figured out by anybody's metric. Like, and he was like, yeah, I mean, I have a lot afforded to me, but like, am I happy? Like, no, it's just like, it's not that I'm not happy. I'm content and I'm working towards other things.
Yeah.
But he's like, and I was having a crisis when I messaged him this, but like, and he messaged me and he was like, I mean, shit, I'll see if I can't pull it up. But he was like, you're the one, I can't find it. You're the only person who I know who's like actively trying to pursue what they want out of their life every single day. And he's like, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure that's exhausting. And it's like, and I think that is also like what a lot of artists feel. I'd imagine that I'm like a
Yeah.
lot of other artists. So he said like deep down, it's like, it is like having that, like the structure of like the tried and true method, or even if it's not tried and true, it has its own roadblocks. Like
Mm-hmm.
lacking the stability of that and saying like I am going to go after this like really nebulous goal, and with like the bar being I'm happy is like so crazy. And it's like to wake up every day and be like, how am I gonna fill my cup? That's so hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, and it's so true because I like to call them my Oprah size goals,
Yeah.
of like all these things that I like want to do, and they're all like, and I think it just comes from like being a creative. Like I, if an idea comes to me and I'm like, well, shit, that's good. How do I do that?
Yeah.
Like and if I can't stop thinking about it, I write it down as like truly like a goal, you know? And then I've learned to keep those things to myself. Or like I share it with my husband now, but it's just like before I met my husband. Like I don't share them with my family because they'll go, "Oh, that's nice. You're
Yeah.
crazy." They'll do this.
It,
That's nice,
that's
Jill.
yeah. I
And
think
they'll
that
smile
also
like this.
yeah, yeah. Like this bitch is crazy. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like there's like two sides of that too. There's like, because the thing where it's like if you write something down, you're like 100% more likely to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's the same. With writing it down, I'll forget about it in 2 seconds. You know what I mean? Unless it's like a
Mm-hmm.
meeting, like I'll put a meeting on the calendar and then I'll remember. But like the the big stuff, like I'm trying to plan this like kind of experimental immersive art experience.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't tell people about that, like, hey, I'm doing this in February, it's like I call it buying the ticket, right? Like if you
Mm-hmm.
buy a ticket to go travel somewhere you've never been before, like I buy a ticket to Beijing, I'll
Yeah.
buy it for March of next year. And it's like, okay, cool, I spent the money now, I'm going. Like I have
Yeah.
to figure the rest out. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so if I tell you like, hey, this event is in March of next year, it's like, okay, well, fuck, I have to work backwards now and figure that out.
Yeah.
And so with those kind of things, I feel like I have to share. But yeah, sometimes that like internal conflict, or like not even conflict, but there's like those like really like Oprah goals to your point. Yeah, you gotta just like you gotta let that be your fuel and not necessarily because people will look at you sideways.
Yeah. 100%. But I'm glad that I'm not the only one that has those
Definitely
things
not alone.
because it's just like back to like, you aren't the only one that goes through the existential crisis of like, what am I doing? How are you
Yeah.
happy? Should I just jump off this bandwagon and just get a normal,
Oh,
nine to
it's too
five
late
job?
for both of us.
Yeah, no, you and I are both too far gone. Like I've tried that, it does not work out. It is not healthy for my mental health. Believe me.
Yeah,
Um,
I become like a different person. But yeah,
yeah,
sorry. On whatever you're
no,
gonna
but
say next.
you're totally fine. But yeah, it's just like and I feel that most artists feel this way in some sense. Especially like, do you feel like there's different types of creatives, like different types of artists, like
For sure.
different versions of like how people operate? I don't know. Like, how am I trying to word this? Like, because obviously as artists we're not normal people.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, what's normal anyway, right?
Exactly.
I I feel
Yeah.
like I see like a wide variety of just like of types of art in terms of how people express themselves, and
Hmm.
sometimes people express themselves through um, just their hobbies, like,
Hmm.
uh, and then there's some people who try and monetize their hobby,
Hmm.
and there's some people who want to help others monetize their hobby,
Hmm.
and all those people all the way up the chain, like the other art fair is a great example. Like the people who
Hmm.
run that show would consider themselves artists,
Yeah.
like, and like but the people who are in the show also consider themselves artists, and like my art is not the same as your event planning art. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And there's a different level of like, and I think a certain mental switch has to happen. And I don't even know if I've had this happen where you transition from I'm doing this for fun because this feeds me to I'm doing this because this is who I am. And then there's like the far side of that spectrum is I am my art, period. And that's when
Hmm.
you have, you look throughout history and there's people who just have lived like very eccentric lives. And to sometimes to their benefit, sometimes to their harm. Like,
Yeah.
whether it be their really sporadic like decision making. I mean, like you look at people who have like very unstable like interpersonal relationships, like
Mm-hmm.
because they always just like they're kind of consumed by their, and like in a good way, but also in a negative way, consumed by their own ego. It's like they can't help themselves but to create what they want to create, and sometimes that means like putting elements of their life to death.
Yeah.
Um, Anthony Bourdain is a great example. Like a lot of his like life was spent like in pursuit of these like very large creative goals,
Mm-hmm.
and like all of his relationships suffered. Ultimately, his relationship with himself suffered as well. And so
Yeah.
like yeah, I just think of like that is like that's like an element of like where I can put the rose colored glasses on and be like I would love to be like that. Where I like, but I it's not that they don't have a conscience. I'm sure they have a conscience. They wrestled with it, but like my conscience is strong. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. I would feel so I would feel bad. You know what I mean? If I was like cutting people out of my life and uprooting myself every so often and just like starting from scratch. There's a certain romance and a certain beauty to like leveling your life and building it up again to like find out what stayed built. But it is like emotionally isolating.
Yeah, obviously, like for me, just instantly, like Picasso and Dali come to mind because you just it's like
For sure.
they like their art like devoured them, and all the relationships just were second. Whereas it's like
Yeah.
now, we have the ability, at least, sounds like you and I both, but other artists, this is like to find that balance where it's not all consuming.
Yeah. Very aptly put.
Mm-hmm. So you do have, speaking of Anthony Bourdain, that's a nice little segue. You do, because you have your black and white graphic art, you have the animals, but then on your website, you have this beautiful portrait, and it's like tone on tone of Anthony Bourdain. And it's like your only portrait
Yeah.
on there. Like, tell us why you made this piece, what is the significance of Anthony Bourdain to you, and why you chose to paint him in that way.
Yeah. So I said it before. I'll say it again. I've been in a restaurant literally my whole life. As soon as I could start working, I started working in a restaurant, and I worked at Red Lobster for a long time, and I spent a lot of time in the back of house there. Most of the time was still up front, but I've always been a waiter primarily. And growing up, I would watch, or not really in the house, but in college, I would watch Parts Unknown, No Reservations, A Cook's Tour, and I had never read Kitchen Confidential, but I would watch those shows because they filled me with this like really like melancholy mix of both like really hopeful optimism that like I was on my way to being successful and one day I would see the world,
Mm-hmm.
and like also I was getting to like draw from and tap into this kind of like uber creative like expose into this man's brain.
Mm-hmm.
um, his writing is beautiful, and the people who shot those shots were super talented, and you can see that they drew a lot from like famous Italian filmmakers and things like that. And so like seeing like this kind of like beautiful capsule project that was like all encompassing and of both a visual and written slash auditory like language really spoke to me as a person who didn't really realize I was an artist yet. But it also made me feel like I was trapped in middle Missouri, in Dallas, wherever, and that I was never going to get out because like I would never make the time to go travel to do those things. And when I do travel, like I try to travel as a traveler, not a tourist.
Mm-hmm.
Like to learn about places I go, to like to be respectful of them, to like you are in a way like you are looking. It's kind of like going to a zoo sometimes with
Mm-hmm.
people, and I don't ever want it to be treated me to be treating it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And but it filled me with this like existential dread. I liken it to like imagine you're like late to a party, a very important party, and
Mm-hmm.
you're on a winding road through the forest to get to this party, and you take a wrong turn, and your lights go out in your car, and your car breaks down, and it's the middle of midnight in a black forest, and there's hungry black bears everywhere. Like it's just kind of like you're never gonna get out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And and that feeling is like, and escaping that feeling has driven a lot of my life choices. Like whenever I would feel like in my youth, it would be kind of that putting to death elements of my social life,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be like stepping away from friend groups or like relationships, etc. it would be running away because I was like, oh, if I move to Denver, Colorado and start over, I'll know what I want to be when I grow up. And like, or if I walk from St. Louis to LA, then like I'll know what I want to. I'm sure that sounds like a monumental experience. I'll know what I want at the end of that. And the reality is like changing the scenery doesn't change your problems.
No.
But it was a way to escape and feel like I was changing my scenery in some capacity. And so throughout my life, and then I read Kitchen Confidential, and I just was like, okay, yeah, this dude is the fucking the tits. Like he is so cool, and I just really felt spoken to. I watched Roadrunner last night or 2 nights ago, which is like the documentary about his life, and there's like a lot of footage in there that I hadn't seen, and like interviews with other people that I hadn't seen before, and in a lot of ways, like, and kind of in a dark way, whenever they spoke about him, especially in past tense,
Yeah.
like they would speak to who he was and his mood, and they would play like clips of him talking about how he saw the world. And a lot of ways, I feel like I have never been spoken to so directly, like, period.
Yeah.
And that was it was a big wake up call, because it was like, I see myself as this sort of like fatalistic hero sometimes, and that's not necessarily healthy. And then, but it was also like, I don't know, it made me feel good, because it was like I am not truly alone in a lot of things as well.
Yeah.
But I painted the portrait. I don't paint portraits. I don't paint people. I'm not a figure artist. But I painted it because I felt like I needed to work through some stuff. So that was the first piece that I did in color after my whole black and white run. And my apartment was all black and white, and I was just like, I need something warm in here. So I picked warm colors. Added bonus, I was very scared of like trying to mix skin tones.
Yeah.
And so I made it a little bit easier on myself that way. And so it just became about like, the tones, like the lights and the darks and things like that. But that's why I painted Anthony Bourdain. And I don't think I'll ever paint another portrait. It's not that because like that's so sacred to me. It's just like that was really rewarding because it turned out really well.
Yeah.
But painting, I don't also think that like that's not what my art like strives to say.
Yeah.
It was just like a pure, like, people talk about like a starving artist, a suffering artist, like, etc. Like that was painted in a place where I was like not in a good headspace, and it did help like pull me out of it, just because it gave me something to take my mind off of like what I was frustrated with my life at the time.
All right, that was loaded.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But no, it's important because it's part of your artistic journey and who you are as an artist. And I always find it interesting, like who and where we connect to, how we as artists connect to other artists. And they not necessarily be like painters, but musicians. I'm sorry, I think chefs are artists 100%.
Yeah,
like
sure.
The chef is 100% an artist. And, but like how we draw inspiration or just feel like when that person speaks or how they act, like I feel heard, I feel seen, like they're showing me that I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And I think it's also really important, especially because some of us artists, like we do go into dark headspaces. Like we all have those dark journeys, and when we can find other people to connect to in that way to help pull us out of those dark holes and those dark spaces, it's really important, because we need that light for us. And to have the wherewithal of like, oh, this is happening. I need to do XYZ to get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
100%.
Like mental health is it's just part of that mental health. And just, I think as artists, I believe as artists, sometimes we're more in tune with our bodies and how we are than other people, because we have that empathetic nature to us.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, to like the flip side of that is, I think that sometimes because I feel like I feel my emotions like in HD, and that, or in 4K or whatever you want to call it, and like that. And when you come across something that you don't understand, like, or that is at odds with itself, like, oh, I have a beautiful life here in Dallas. Like I have essentially everything I wanted. I'm very creatively fulfilled. I have all my bills are paid. I have money in the bank. I have savings. But it's like, but there's still something that's like eating at me, and like
Mm-hmm.
trying to determine what that is, and like having to work through that is a much more public thing than, because I mean, especially if you're like driven to create in a sense where you are also like in the digital age on display, like everybody on Instagram is seeing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it can often feel like you're at the zoo, even though you're not. Like nobody cares. You know what I mean? And that's okay. They're not supposed to. But like
Mm-hmm.
it feels like those things, whether it's like the music you're picking for the post or the painting that you're painting in the video or whatever it is, like those things either become really, really heavy or they become the only thing that frees you from the rest of your like troubles.
Yeah. Totally. 100% agree. 100% agree. So let I want to talk about your animal paintings
Yeah, for sure.
because they're one intriguing and like they make you second look. Like first glance, you're like, oh, it's an animal, but it's out of proportion, whatever. And then when you look closer, you see something, and you're like, wait, what is happening?
Yeah, for sure.
What is going on here?
Yeah.
So, can you tell us how you came to develop this collection and how the animals came to be?
Yeah, so the collection is ongoing. It's called Wild Animals. And all of the animals that are depicted in like kind of a geometric, like pseudo cubist, like very just like contemporary or postmodern. I don't know how they organize art anymore. Uh, but yeah, they're all. I really wanted to play with gradients. One of the things that I've been like really heavily inspired by is just like playing video games growing up. Is these sort of like low poly
Mm-hmm.
shapes and just like really blocky, pixely looking colors. And I wanted to do animals, but I also really love like American traditional tattoos. So I wanted to incorporate some of that like boldness and less of the like attempts at realism.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to kind of like play up the big parts of these animals and like bring highlights to the parts of them that I thought were like really interesting. So when I started creating them, I was originally like, okay, I'm going to just kind of get practice painting in a more American traditional tattoo style.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to sit there and draw panthers over and over and over, and then draw eagles over and over. And I was like, okay, well, this is not rewarding or fun. So I'm just going to start painting some. And then I wanted to just add more. I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know how to do it. So I started painting the panther was the first one I did, and I gave him like claws, and I was supposed to have his like claws like beckoning, and then I kind of drew him weird, and I was like, well, it looks like he's holding something, so I put a vial in it, and then I was like, okay, well, he needs to come out of a portal or something, and Juliana offhanded was like, he should be coming out of a toilet, so she was being funny, and I was like, that's actually a great idea. And then all the animals after that have just been kind of inspired by the vast carnival of people that I've worked with over my career, and they're almost all of them are just doing something that my mom wouldn't approve of. And so that's kind of the emphasis. It's like it might be criminal, it might not be criminal, it might be like I don't know, spearfishing, or I just did a crocodile that like ate a chicken. Like none of those things are strictly like outside of the realm of reality in the animal kingdom, but they're all like I had sold at the other art fair. I sold a canvas of like a bat selling fake handbags and a giraffe selling cigarettes out of a urinal.
Yeah, I was
Like,
just like, I know the giraffe one quite well, and I saw his head coming out of the urinal, and like,
yeah, yeah,
at first glance, you don't see that until you go, wait, that's a urinal.
yeah. And I mean, I do like that element of it is really fun because especially at the other art fair where people are already kind of like meandering by, like, it's some kind of clip. It does get you do get those like double takes. People like, and then there's people who are like, is that a urinal? And they're like kind of grossed out. And it's like, yeah. And they're like, why? I'm like, like it matched the color scheme. I don't know. Like, what do you want? What is going to make this better? It's still a urinal on the canvas. Like,
I felt that your art was so different. Like there was a couple artists like yours and another artist that I've already interviewed, um, like so different than what was seen at the other art fair. Like there's a lot of, do not take this the wrong way.
no, I won't.
There's a lot of pretty art.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
decorative might be
Yeah.
the word.
Yeah.
Yours,
I mean, IKEA art. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yours has this punch to it, that's different and it's offbeat. And I think
Yeah.
that that's what makes it unique and truly original in its
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I feel like one of the things that I also like want to do is like not like I think a lot of artists say this, not make art that looks like anybody else's. And
Yeah.
to the untrained eye or the layman, and I would include myself in that category, like there's plenty of times I've done the other art fair twice,
Yeah.
and um, the curation team that runs that event does it. I think does a good job of getting a mix. But at every show, there is art that I see all over the place. If that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that's no shade to those people who are making a living doing it, but that's just like not my cup of tea. It just doesn't. To me, I think that I'm not looking for art to hang on my walls. Period. So I'm not the person who they're marketing to anyway. You know what I mean? Like I'm just gonna go paint the stuff I want on my walls. Forget buying it.
Yeah.
And it becomes hard within the artistic space, I think, to not become jaded sometimes when you look at like what's trendy or like what does well. A close friend of mine now was the first show I did was like across the hall from me and like down a couple booths. And if you ask me, like it's the common trope. It's like, oh, my 5-year-old could have painted that. Like I do art shows. Like people tell me that all the time. Like, and it's like, okay, cool. Like have your 5-year-old paint it. Like don't tell me about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm here selling it. Can your 5-year-old register an LLC? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that that's a trope. Like that is tiring. And I'm sure as an artist who's producing at a high level, like that does get exhausting to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I think we probably have a very similar opinion of the other art fair in Dallas then.
Yeah.
And like, but the thing is like people go there because it's like they can sell those crazy, crazy big pieces,
Mm-hmm.
or they can. I mean, the people who do the best there are the ones who just network.
Yeah. Right.
And like, and that's just not where I think either of us are. But I know I'm not in my artistic journey. But at fine art fairs, you see the same thing all the time. It's like this is supposed to be all like they have all these like riders and stuff. Like you can't bring candles, you can't bring merch, you can't bring. It's like it's just paintings and prints. That's it.
Yeah.
And then you'll see somebody who gets like a double wide booth, which is like $1,000, and they just sell like 36 by 25, like just like weird dimensions, whatever. And it's like a portrait of Audrey Hepburn with a space helmet on, Anthony Bourdain with maps all over and Mod Podged on. And they sell originals, they sell prints, and the originals are like 500 a piece. And somebody goes and buys the original, and then they put a new original up that's the same one. It's like this is not like you're a factory, bro. Like it's not to say this isn't art. This is definitely art. This is super cool. Like, but
Yeah.
it's not like there is a bit of deception there. I feel like the reality is it's not deceiving the buyer. The buyer doesn't give a fuck. The buyer wants Audrey Hepburn up on their wall. They don't care if it's one of 10 or one of
Yeah.
50 or one of 3,000. It feels deceiving to the people like you and I who are on the booth on either side who are like we're fighting tooth and nail, and it's like I feel like it's a cop out to use somebody else's photo and somebody else's map to like make this painting, but they didn't, and they're printing money this weekend that I'm not. And
Yeah.
so like there's definitely some of that like why are you even hating from outside the club? You can't even get in. Like there's definitely some of that going on our end.
Yeah. Right.
But it's like damn, I would love to just and then I'm the opposite if I'm making money at a show. I'm like, oh yeah, this my shit is fucking great. Like
Yeah.
like,
And it's just like, when do you feel like, do I cop out and do something that will be like super, super salesy and like small and get it out there, or do I stick to my guns and create what I refer to as honest art, because it's just like it comes from a really real desired place to not because how do I word this? I don't make art for people. I make art because I need it to come out of me, and I am trying to tell my version of a story.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing.
Okay, that makes sense. Sure.
And so if because I've tried to do this, if I sway from that, then I'm not happy with what I produce. And if I'm not happy with what I produce, how can I be honest people like to sell that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like that's where I feel like it's a cop out.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that like that's where to what I said earlier, like it's somebody who's treating it like a business versus somebody who's treating it like, this is my passion project. And like it's okay to have a passion project that makes money, or doesn't in my case. But
mine too.
when, yeah, but like I've done I longhorns always do well in Texas. You know what I mean? Like
Obviously.
if you can put a cow on anything, I painted a longhorn for the Deep Ellum show that I did this past year, and like it sold on the last day. Like I got out of my hair, and it was like something that I had put like relatively minimal effort into to make, and because I knew that it was going to sell, right? You know, it's like this is just like it looks like Angry Birds like longhorn. Like
Hmm.
it just I don't know. It wasn't, but like making it didn't provide me anything. Like it was just like an adding on to my tasks, and it's like I have enough tasks as is to add stuff that I don't really love in there too.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. Ugh, it's the art world. It's frustrating,
yeah,
but we're in it and we love it. It's a love-hate relationship.
it's definitely love hate.
We
Yeah,
go through I go through modes, and then it's just like seeing, because I follow like a lot of big time galleries and like people, like upper people in the art world, and like seeing what's actually happening in like New York arts, LA art, not LA, London art scene. It's kind of scary right now. And like what
how
are
so?
well, not scary. Scary is not the right word. But it's just like I believe that there's a change coming. There's going to be a huge shift. This is my perspective of it, because it's just like
Yeah,
one of the really really big galleries in London or New York. I don't remember where. The White Cube. Anyway, well, like, but they all of a sudden have to have like a whole bunch of layoffs because they're not selling enough.
actually,
Memento.
I just feel like the sales are down.
Yeah.
Sale, yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Across the board, like sales are down, and that's like in every industry. I mean, tattooers are talking about 30. They're 30% down from
Mm-hmm.
pre-COVID, and I think and restaurants saw this too, where it's like everything opened back up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like everything was nobody made any money in one year, and
Mm-hmm.
then everything opened back up the next year, and that was like people were like, holy crap, we have not spent any money, like we've been going crazy inside the house, we need to get out, we need to go to art fairs, we need to go to restaurants, we need to go get tattoos, like life is short. And so those industries saw crazy booms. I mean, like when I worked at the restaurant I worked at in Trinity Groves, it was like the summer that I came back, I was making like $4,000 a month minimum,
Oh wow.
like closer to six, like waiting tables, and not even 40 hours a week, like 30 hours a week, and like, and then that dried up because what happened is all of these new restaurants opened. Like now that the COVID, not that the COVID boom was over, but it was like all the little businesses that had been saving money were like finally able to get spaces at affordable costs. And the same is true now with the art world too. Is
Mm-hmm.
like all these people who loved, like really got into. I'm one of them. Got into art during COVID, like and found they had this passion that they wanted to work on and develop. Those people are now flooding the art space, and so that is in some senses like bringing the quality, if you will, down because you get a lot of people who like, oh, I make like wine mom art, like, you know, those kind of like the people who are in it and they're testing the waters. And then you have the people who've been like kind of the entrenched, like the old guard, if you will, who are A, really resentful of that. And then B, now they're not getting spots at bigger shows because there's all this new talent and they're getting either hedged out or retiring.
Mm-hmm.
And so the customer base that would normally buy from them is also suffering because of the economy and they're not coming to shows because like the people who they used to buy from aren't coming to the shows anymore and they don't have the extra money to give them to them at the shows.
Yeah. It's just it's crazy to see. So I think that I think the way that art is going to be shown in the future is really going to change, and I think it's going to bring about a new unique way. I think that there's just going to be a shift in how galleries present themselves, or even if galleries are going to be a thing. And I think there will always
Yeah.
be galleries, but I think that it's going to be there has to be a new business model of what a gallery looks like.
Yeah, I think I have 2 points on that. Like, first of all, like I 100% agree with you about the galleries. Like, there's just not galleries are a dime a dozen, and I don't even know what percentage of that I would credit as being like really, really good galleries because they're doubling your price at least so that they can get half the cut. And then, are they doing marketing? Like, who knows? Like, more often than not, your art is just hanging in there, and
Mm-hmm.
like that's cool for like an evening to go take all your friends and pals and old collectors to be like, look how successful I am. But at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, like sales are sales, money is money.
Mm-hmm.
And more we see like content creators, like those kind of people who are on TikTok, Instagram, etc. Like Verna Brockhurst is a great example. He's on Instagram. He does these like paintings that are a mixture of, I think it's acrylic, it might be oil, paint with like grout material,
Hmm.
and he puts them like and makes them like snowboarding routes, and then paints these like really tiny realistic snowboarders on them, and like those paintings sell for thousands of dollars. He's not in a gallery; he's selling them himself,
Mm-hmm.
and like if those were in a gallery, they'd be $100,000 pieces. But like because he's the one making the money, he can charge 10, and like
Yeah.
that's still insane to me. But like whatever. And then so I think yeah, a big shift with like there's so much room for like the little guy to edge out the big guy. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like if I'm representing somebody and I can do all the marketing for them and all this stuff, and I'm a two-man operation, like forget Sotheby's. Like you can move paintings through me. Like you don't have to just like hope that you hit the lottery one day.
Yeah, exactly.
And I forgot what the second thing I was going to say was.
That's
but
okay.
It was something along those lines.
Yeah, it's just it. Ugh, we could talk forever. We could literally talk forever.
For sure.
But let's.
Oh, so I do remember
Okay,
before we wrap it up. The second thing is and this is actually going to be a segue into my closeout. I can do that if you want.
Okay.
Is experiential art.
Yes.
Like talking about bringing the art to the people, like having installations that people can walk through. Meow Wolf is a great example.
Yes.
Like that is what brings people into like closer contact. Growing up in St. Louis, we had a place called the Science Center, which was like interactive natural history and science museum.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that, while it was like scientific focused, was also like in a way an art installation.
Mm-hmm.
They would invite artists who like did sound, and you could like play with the oscilloscopes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like just really, really cool stuff that people can bring, like families can go to. Like families are where the money is. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Like if your kid likes something, you'll take them there 100 times. And like your kid doesn't. I don't think your kid really cares at all about what paintings in their bedroom, but maybe they do. But I mean, I don't think they do.
No.
And so I think that is like the future of like how your art is going to be shown. If you're an artist and you want to like. It's always gonna be paintings, like those things are canvases, wall stuff, like the decorations are always gonna be there.
Mm-hmm.
Like that can be your safe bet. But if you really wanted to like, and that's what I'm gonna try and do, like push myself and like get into a different space, like the experience is where it's at. It's way more like conducive to like locking in and just saying like, okay, this is my job for a year. The product at the end has a clear metric where it's like, did people like this? Did people not like it? Did they buy tickets? Did they not buy tickets? Like, what are they saying? And it gives you get instant feedback. Like with the paintings, it's like, okay, cool. You liked it enough to spend $900 on it, and you posted me on Instagram one time. That's all I got. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we literally could talk forever about this. Literally.
Yeah.
We might have to do a second episode.
I'm down to do a follow up. Yeah, I can be a regular.
Okay, you might have to be a regular because it's just like we can go down that road of what that experimental art spaces look like, because I think they're popping up more and more, and I've been to a few and they're really freaking cool.
Yeah,
because it's just like being able to interact with art. You're creating a memory, an experience for them, rather than here you go. Which obviously, like you said, decor will never go out. Like that's always going to be.
And we haven't even touched on like rage bait art. Like there's people who make art just to make people mad. Like, and that is crazy too.
Okay, we're gonna have to do a follow-up episode, like in like
that's fine.
A month or so, and like catch up and feel like where have we grown from here? What have we done new?
Absolutely, yeah, I'm down.
Okay, so. If people want to buy your unique wild animals and other things, where can people find you? Where can they support you?
On Instagram, you can find me at Big and Pasty. That's BIG, the letter N as in Nancy, PASTY. A DM is honestly going to probably be quickest. I'm always on my phone. You can also email me, kyle@bigandpasty.com. But if you want to buy some stuff, you can go to www.bigandpasty.com. All the prints on that website are printed on demand. They're not editioned. If you're interested in editioned prints or in canvases on their own, please contact me directly. Those can get shipped to you a lot cheaper than if I do it through the website that way. So it'll save you some money. It'll save me some time. But yeah, Instagram, Big and Pasty, bigandpasty.com, kyle@bigandpasty.com for any inquiries. professional requests, etc.
Perfect. And I'll obviously make sure to include that in all of the show notes so that if you want to go and support Kyle with his work, be Mr. Big and Pasty, and his uniqueness and his artistic talent. So, Kyle, thank you so much for coming on the Artist Stoop today. I appreciate it very thoroughly much.
For sure,
Enjoyed this
Jillian.
conversation, and like I said, we're gonna have to do a follow up. For sure.
Oh yeah, I'll be back. I got plenty of hot takes you can clip for your feed.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Bye.
And that, my friends, wraps up another colorful episode of The Artist Stoop. A huge thank you to our incredible guests for sharing their art and stories. If you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on the next Stoop chat. And don't forget to spread the love. Share your favorite episodes with fellow art enthusiasts, and let's build this community together. Connect with us on social media at JGuze Studio and Jillian Zepeda Art for behind-the-scene peeks, artist spotlights, and a sneak peek at my own art. Until next time, stay inspired, stay curious, and keep that creative fire burning. This is Jillian Zepeda signing off from The Artist Stoop. And remember, the world is your canvas, so paint it vividly.